The NBA trade deadline was crazy. There were some deals that made a ton of sense for both sides, there were other deals that made no sense for both sides, and there was just some crazy trades that nobody would have expected to happen. And in this video, we're going to go over some of the winners and losers of the NBA trade deadline. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, please consider hitting that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics.
So first, let's start off with the New Orleans Pelicans. So very early on into the season, the Pelicans were struggling pretty tremendously, and the season was looking bleak for them. But as of late, the Pelicans really did a fantastic job to really start to turn things around, and currently they're the 10th seed in the Western Conference and are also on a 4-game winning streak. And it's pretty clear at this point that the Pelicans are at the very least trying to make the play-in the Western Conference, which obviously is very obtainable considering they're already at that point right now. And due to the win-now nature of the New Orleans Pelicans, they recently traded for CJ McCollum. So the full details of this trade is the New Orleans Pelicans receive CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., and Tony Snell, and the Portland Trailblazers receive Josh Hart, Tomas Satoransky, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a 2022 protected first-round pick, and 2 future second-round picks. But first, let's talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. How does this trade benefit them? So it's pretty clear at this stage in his career, CJ McCollum is a very lethal scorer in this league. He can score from all 3 levels, fantastic 3-point shooter, mid-range shooter, and has a great ability to finish around the basket, also has a decent passing and playmaking ability. So overall, CJ offensively is a very versatile player and would basically help any team in my opinion. But I think he fits in pretty well with the Pelicans specifically because I think he could play off a guy in Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson if he ever returns pretty well, in the sense that he's a fantastic catch and shoot 3-point shooter. And he doesn't always need the ball in his hands to be super effective. But I also think once Brandon Ingram or Zion comes off the court, CJ could also do a fantastic job with the bench unit and just be a lethal scorer from there as well. I just think the Pelicans adding CJ to this team certainly makes them a much better team in my opinion, and just gives them a ton more firepower offensively. Now of course he does struggle defensively, he does have a pretty big contract, but in my opinion this was a pretty good trade overall for the Pelicans, and I would definitely mark them as one of the winners of this trade deadline. But now let's talk about one of the losers of the trade deadline, which is the Portland Trailblazers. So of course they were involved in the trade that I just mentioned. They also made another trade recently where they traded away Norman Powell, and basically both of the moves that they've made, they've gotten some decent young players in return, but basically the main reason why they did that was to create some cap space. And ideally what they're saying at least is once they go into the offseason, they'll be able to sign another star to hopefully put them in a better position than they were previously to winning an NBA championship. Because it was pretty clear to basically everybody that the Portland Trailblazers were always a pretty good team, but they weren't really ever a true championship contender. So what they want to do, at least what they're saying, is they want to do a complete reset, bring some new guys in hopefully during the offseason, and go from there. But in my opinion, I don't necessarily see it like that. This NBA free agency, as a lot of people know, is certainly going to be pretty weak, so it's hard for me to see the Portland Trailblazers really bringing in anybody in, honestly. Maybe they could do it, maybe Damian Lillard could attract one of those guys, but honestly I think it's going to be very difficult. And honestly I see the moves that they made as more of a rebuilding move more than a retooling move, in my opinion at least, but of course I could be wrong. But overall I certainly do see the Trailblazers as one of the losers of the trade deadline. But now let's talk about the huge trade of James Harden going to Philly and Ben Simmons going to Brooklyn. So a few days back I actually made a video on this saying I personally think it will happen soon, if not by the deadline, by the offseason. And of course it actually did get done by the trade deadline. But looking at the full trade details, the Philadelphia 76ers are getting James Harden and Paul Millsap, and the Brooklyn Nets are getting Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. So first, let's talk about this from Philly's perspective. So as I mentioned before in that other video, I think James Harden playing in Philly is an absolute perfect fit for them. Harden and Joel Embiid are going to be such a great 1-2 punch running the pick and roll or pick and pop, and honestly, I see those guys as very similar to LeBron James and Anthony Davis running the pick and roll and pick and pop, and honestly could be a little more effective. I think it's such a perfect fit, and the Sixers did a fantastic fantastic job at getting James Harden. Now I will say they did have to give up some decent players in Seth Curry, who's a very underrated player. Of course, he's a great catch and shoot 3-point shooter and spaces the floor out, but also had the capability to do a lot more than just that. So you are losing a very valuable scorer in Seth Curry, and you also are losing Andre Drummond, who is a fantastic rebounder, a decent defender, I would say. But honestly, I don't think that means as much considering you have Joel Embiid on your team. But I think for the Sixers, it's certainly a fantastic trade for them, and I think you can certainly say they're the winners of this trade deadline. But now quickly talking about it from Brooklyn's perspective, I did mention I don't think Ben Simmons fits in with Brooklyn that well. I think he could fit in, but I don't think he fits in that well. They did get some other pieces in return. Seth Curry, as I mentioned, that's a great piece for them. They did get a few first-round picks for him, but overall, I don't want to say the Nets are a loser in this trade deadline because I don't think they got robbed or anything, but at the same time, I certainly think the Sixers won this trade. But now let's move on to the Indiana Pacers, who made multiple deals, but the main deal that we're going to be talking about is a Tyrese Halliburton trade. And this trade, I don't think anybody saw coming. The full deal was the Indiana Pacers are receiving Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson, and the Sacramento Kings are receiving Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and a 2023 second-round pick. Now, I think everybody can agree that the Indiana Pacers won this trade, at least early on. Of course, things can change as the seasons progress. We don't necessarily know what Halliburton's going to be in the next 5 years, although we think he's going to be a very, very good player. And the same could be said with Sabonis. Maybe he turns into a legitimate superstar. Currently, he's an all-star type player, clearly, but of course, there's a chance he could turn into a superstar player going forward. But at least the initial reaction from most people is the Indiana Pacers certainly won this deal. But now let's actually talk about why, in my opinion, the Pacers won this deal. So as most people know, Tyrese Halliburton is one of the better young and up-and-coming point guards in the NBA, and great young point guard play is very valuable, which is why everybody was shocked once he was traded. But talking about what Tyrese can do out there, offensively at least, he's a very talented player. He's a fantastic 3-point shooter, actually shooting over 40%, which is crazy considering his jump shot form is a little awkward, but I guess it doesn't matter if he's shooting that high of a percentage. From that mid-range area, I would say he's okay at this point. He certainly needs to improve from that mid-range area, but he does have a nice floater within his game. But once driving all the way to the basket, I would say he's very talented at that and has the ability to finish with either hand, either his left or right hand. And overall, it's just very crafty once driving all the way to the basket. But besides his individual scoring ability, he also has a very, very good passing and playmaking ability, and overall just a fantastic basketball IQ, which is very, very important for a young point guard. But besides Tyrese's great offensive ability, he's also a fantastic defender. And really the combination of his offensive and defensive abilities make Tyrese the player he is today and make him so valuable to any NBA team that would have him. But another part of this trade deal that I don't think that many people are talking about is the fact that the Pacers also got Buddy Hield in this deal. Now, obviously, not too many people talk about Buddy Hield because he was playing in Sacramento and they weren't playing that well, but Buddy Hield is certainly one of the better 3-point shooters we have in the NBA. He's a fantastic catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He can create for himself from that 3-point range, also has a nice mid-range shot, can finish at the basket, and overall adding a guy like Buddy to this Pacers roster is certainly a plus, at least in my opinion. But now let's talk about the Sacramento side of this trade. So I know a lot of people are saying this trade was a highway robbery and how could the Kings ever do this? Now, as I mentioned, I do think the Pacers won this trade pretty clearly, but at the same time, I think people are underrating how good Sabonis is. Sabonis, of course, at this point is an all-star caliber player, and he also is very young, so who knows, maybe in the future he'll become a superstar type player. You never know how good he can get because already at this point, he's a very, very good player. He's also a very versatile player offensively, has a fantastic touch around the basket in terms of his post moves or even driving to the basket and putting up some crafty layups. Also has a very nice mid-range jump shot. He's still working on his 3-point jump shot, but to a certain extent he has improved it and certainly has the ability to shoot from that 3-point range. Also has a fantastic passing and playmaking ability, especially for his size. And overall, I just think Sabonis is a very versatile big and certainly a really, really good player that people are underrating in my opinion. But of course, as I mentioned, I do think the Kings are one of the losers in this trade deadline. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think my list of winners and losers of the trade deadline made sense, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these 2 videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.
Dosage. Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetic. Hope you can't go where I'm headed.